strictly huddle rooms? Because that seems to be a very buzzy term. You still have traditional rooms. What are you seeing? How is the change happening? You guys have been in place now for a couple of years. You're watching an evolution happen. What are you guys witnessing as being on the street, boots on the ground?
I'll start from my perspective. From what I've seen here and a few other places, that it's UCC is no longer just a conference room. It's no longer just a chat tool. It's all encompassed. To us, it's a way of working. So it's your workflow. It's when I get up in the morning, can I get my email? Can I see my daily meetings? Can I schedule those rooms? Can I take those documents that I need to present and prepare? Is that all in one ecosystem, or can those ecosystems talk to each other and all collaborate together? And to me in Blackrock, that's what UCC is. It's unified communications. So it's making sure that all our groups can talk together, and then can our clients talk to us? So that's our world.
Nice. Marc?
So I was going to say, I think one of the best things and maybe the worst things that have happened over the last couple of years is the open workspace. And that's allowed us to have quite a large number of huddle rooms, which means now on any given work floor, there are more video conferencing systems than I could have imagined years ago. And the other thing that's very powerful about that is all of these systems that we're putting in, and I think pretty much the marketplace will show this, that they all have a common set of tools that you can use. So you have audio, video, you can collaborate. The downside of this, of course, is when we talk about open workspace, not everybody needs to be collaborating all the time. And I think that's sort of a message that we're being told, like, you need to collaborate, you need to collaborate. Well, I have a lot of work that I have to do at times that's personal work, and I need a personal space for that. So while I think collaboration is important, I think it's also very important to recognize the other side of that wave.
I think what I'm saying is a focus on what is a colleague's workflow. Like, what is your workflow? What does it take for you to actually get work done? Whether you're in the office or not in the office, there are a variety of tools. I think the balance of work and life has become, has just shot up in the industry, and I think Dave mentioned that earlier, was that there are some people or folks now that if they cannot work remotely, they will not even consider your organization. So, you can have all the tools in the world and all the greatest and latest conference rooms, but if you don't allow or have the flexibility to give these colleagues the ability to work remote with the right tools to be able to connect to any particular person, you'll lose some really good talent.
One of the things that you guys all struck on similar vein. Technology manager used to be projector jockeys, right? Say I went in a projector to a conference room, walk out, that was it. We're now in the AV/IT space. We're not going to get into the conversation of it's happened, it's here. Okay, you guys all have an IT component to your business, right? There's an integration part, there's an IT component, and there's possibly even a touch into the mobile side of the business, because that all is part of your ecosystems and workflows, right? So you guys are more hands-on when it comes to deciding not just the technology, but what's going into the spaces. How much from the day you started to say today, how different has been the needs analysis? It used to be walking into a room and going into a space like this and looking for a floor box, existing conduit. It's all we talked for many years. What has changed in the last 5 years or so since you guys have, as we started to unify these platforms and all that, and the IT component to it? So what's changed? You can start.
So building rooms is only about 10% of what I do anymore. Mm-hmm. It's connecting platforms is probably up 20-30%. Security is probably at 40-50%. I'm making sure that the platforms that we have deployed already, or what we're deploying, is a huge priority for me to make sure that we're audit compliant, we're following the regulations that we have to, make sure the recordings are secure. It's taking up almost 50% of the job. And then the last percentage is being a network liaison to my infrastructure, because everything I touch now is now on the network. And financial services where I sit is extremely complex to have AV on the network. So, yeah, I build rooms, I still build a lot of rooms, but it only takes 10% of my time. I hire consultants now to do that for me because I'm too busy doing all the other battles. So I hand off my standards to these consultants, say, here's my basis of design, improve where you see necessary, feed me in, new input of the industry that I don't know about. But I'm busy about connecting the platforms. I'm busy sitting down with my users, understanding the workflow. And that's actually a really huge part of what I've changed is that I no longer sit behind my desk with CAD drawings and building rooms. I take more time and travel the world, understanding my colleagues' workflow and design the solutions that they actually need, not what we think we need. We sit down with the end user saying, hey, we actually need, we don't need these large rooms anymore. I need 45 huddle rooms, I need 10 phone rooms, I need to be able to take my phone, USB-C, and do a BYOB room. That's what we need. And then taking that back to our designs and redeploying it. But I don't even build rooms as much as I used to anymore.
Gary, is that?
Oh, yeah, so I think what I see is an emphasis on mobile first, and how can I connect or collaborate via my mobile device. Conference rooms obviously definitely will always still be important, right? People need a gathering place, but the first thing that I would say that I'm noticing is, do you work on an Android device and you work on a Apple device, an iOS device? And I think making sure whatever platform or vendor you're going with, that they can operate seamlessly on those particular devices. I think mobile is just going to grow significantly probably in the next few years. That's the change that I've seen from, I would say, within the last 5 years, how every manufacturer has like a mobile first.
And Gary, with that, do you see your job being more complex with security, being a mobile first in the financial industry?
No, absolutely. At the table, when you're thinking about mobile first, security should be there with you along with your general counsel. Just because you want to make sure that you're not putting your organization at risk in any way, and making sure there's no data expo happening.
So you say lawyer up. That's excellent. Yes. Marc, what changes have you seen?
Well, I would agree with both of these gentlemen. For me, I'm still involved in a lot of room design, but that's only one element of the communication chain that goes on. So it's really a lot about connectivity and interoperability, and not just from a technical perspective. It's also trying to make sure that people who join the meeting have equal footing. So, as an example, now that all the video and collaborative tools have gotten so much better, we still, of course, have people who want to join a conference by telephone. And lo and behold, that telephone toll quality is awful. And these people who think they're joining the call by phone and being an active participant, they're really not. A lot of times they're having trouble hearing. A lot of times, it's difficult for them to break into the conversation. So, believe it or not, and while all this other stuff is working really well, like our room systems are very reliable and very robust, we get tremendous numbers of complaints from people who joined the meeting by phone, and of course that's a legitimate way to join the meeting. I mean, if nothing else, you can pick up a phone and call in. They're having a hard time. Maybe that's a learning curve. Maybe people will use other means. Like if I can try to say to them, use your mobile app, so you'll get better audio quality. Maybe that's part of the changing workforce. I know David alluded to that. Like my generation, sure, we pick up a phone, but maybe that's going to go away. So I think trying to understand how all these different modalities can connect together in a meeting, in a call, and give people the right tools to participate effectively. That's kind of what we're focusing on. And certainly with that, just to reinforce, definitely comes security, because the more different pieces you start putting together, the more difficult it becomes to make sure that this stuff is secure.
Question? One of the Sure, go ahead. Question.
You have to check the else.
Oh.
You mentioned phones. I was actually just really curious. I'm sorry, I should set a good example. I'm David Danto from CCA. You mentioned phones. My first job in the industry, well, one of my earlier jobs, they give you this thick phone directory, and then as I changed to another job, the directory would be thinner, and then it was gone, it was online, and now who has phones anymore? Are you guys still installing a desk phone for the employees in your organization, or is
So
it
we're in
running on mobile?
transition. So we're in a transition period in the sense that we're starting to look at using enterprise soft phones. We definitely, though, our workspace that's provided to an employee has to include a phone. We don't expect our employees to use their cell phone as a means of communication solely. And some of that is regulatory too, because some calls have to be recorded and whatnot. But we're definitely seeing a transition now from hardware phone to software phone. And then, of course, people use their mobile phones as needed or as allowed.
Yeah, so, I just built out a huge, 1,000-person office in Atlanta, and there's not the plan was not to have a single physical phone in space. All was done, everyone was happy, all the users liked Jabber, everyone was great. Health and safety came to us. 911 regulations in the state of Georgia, I actually need physical phones places. So we had to go back and reassess some of the designs. We had to go back and look at our standards now that we went completely soft phone. But with 911 calls, you can't pinpoint locations the same way with Jabber, the same way that you can with a physical phone. So we wanted to have it put at the end of every row a physical phone. Against a lot of people's, it's a regulation you have to follow.
A public phone, not one assigned to one person.
Public desk phone. It's a public desk phone that's kind of what we had. We were able to cut down the numbers by putting in courtesy phones in conference rooms and things like that. We moved 100% to a soft phone. So if you see older people looking in the hallways getting really angry, it's probably connected to the phone. We are going to soft charts, but that's the direction. We're in the process of doing a large restack and moving out of this building by September. So September of 2022. So when we're fully out of the building, everyone will be moving without a phone and on the VDI.
And Aaron, comment, John, specifically for you. I went through Superstorm Sandy. Those of us who had a physical phone that was a wired analog phone could call people. The rest of us could not.
Yep, and that's the exact point of why our health and safety data said we need physical, PoE devices that are, that actually, they can't just be PoE, they have to be powered as well from the desk as part of the policy. So we can't just have a PoE phone just on the desk, it actually has to have PoE and the backup power supply to them.
So ironically though, David, even though we're moving away from hardware phones, that's making headset hardware much more important.
The peripheral battle is definitely taking off more than it has, I can't, the amount of peripheral hardware I have under my desk that I get a sample and testing is gone astronomical out the door. You can't test them, and they're all the same, and they all have, what people aren't looking at is the security vulnerabilities of those Bluetooth headsets. How many people were sitting outside my street in those little vans, what's Blackrock training next? Because that's the real thing.
Or even worse, you see people that are using the AirPods, the consumer headsets. Yep. They've got one in their ear, they leave the other one at their desk. They don't know if anybody picks it up and listens to the call.
Well, a lot of these things that are on the deck band, very unsecured bands. It's amazing. We put it in one of our first shore systems. It was on the deck band. We had to go. Where's my fan back there? We took months to try to figure it out. We said, you know what, rip it out. It's not going to work. The deck band is too busy. It's too unsecured. There's too much garbage in my environment. There's too many call centers. There's too many things talking on it. But it's becoming a huge problem.
Any more questions from the audience?
Well, I was going to say, in regards to phones, I think it really does depend on the nature of your business and the personas in your organization. There will be cases where some folks actually need a hard phone and then some folks won't. And another comment I wanted to make on mobile, one thing I think that's going to be key is this whole 5G rollout that we're going to see within the next year or two. I think that is going to significantly change, how we use mobile devices, right? If you're getting a much more robust and better quality audio and video experience because your phone or device has the bandwidth, you'd expect to see more and more.
I think on that 5G is going to change everything for us. Right now, if you look around my room, everything's, I get network reports everywhere. That's going away. I'm being asked, more and more, does my video endpoint really have to be a hardwired connection can I go be more wireless if we give you the right 5G network? That's becoming a bigger thing to have to look at. So that 5G is definitely a huge game changer in the
Huge thing within the
market.
Really? Because I would think that Wi-Fi 6.
Mike, somewhere, please.
Can I challenge that?
Yeah, I want you to,
Okay.
but I want you to have time to do it.
You're taking the right from your own colleague.
State your name.
Just like to
yeah,
expand
it's all right.
that.
State your name, please.
My name's Marc, and I'm
Typical.
from Shin Wilson Wilkie. So, walk me through that for a minute, because when we look at spaces, right, a lot of the technology prep, Wi-Fi is dominant, right? Moving into Wi-Fi 6, we got the bandwidth. It's going to be there. And a lot of that work is done to bring the mobile services through antennas into the space because of the density of the spaces and the ability to get signal. So tell me exactly how 5G is actually going to be a significant game changer as opposed to just more advancements in Wi-Fi services, so you can use your laptop at the same level you can in mobile.
Well, I'll let you jump in, but I was gonna say, you know, whether, sort of skirts your question, whether it be Wi-Fi 6 or 5G, I can tell you that from an infrastructure planning perspective, we're being pushed to try to reduce the number of hard drops, right?
Yes.
You know, I think with both of those standards, in my mind, I really don't know which one is gonna be more successful, both from a technological perspective and from an adoption perspective. So we'll have to see. But I think kind of what you were alluding to, or at least what I see is, you know, why do I need to have all these hardwired network drops in the building?
It's definitely, you know, I still use 5G and Wi-Fi, because I still interchange them. I don't differentiate them. In my mind, they are separate technology, but they're the same general idea of wireless compute.
Yeah.
But where I see 5G really coming into play, and Gary's going to agree with this on, is our mobile streaming. So the ability to stream to the desktops, the ability to send today's event out to all the users that couldn't make it with us live with a single click. You can do it now, but 5G makes it even easier.
And think about just capacity, right? So in here, there's probably like 1 or 2 access points, and there's a limited amount of users that can actually connect before somebody gets bumped off. With 5G, that's not the case, right? It's all about capacity and the ability to get video more near real time to a device. And in longer distance.
The biggest thing I've noticed is the transition from 5G to Wi-Fi 6. So as you're going from your subway station into the building, how's that seamless workflow happening? That is key. So the idea is that when you're walking from the subway into the building and you transfer between systems, that you don't lose it. If you're on a call, you don't lose your call, and it will transfer to the building because he knows that the building Wi-Fi is better. Where's that? That's the key to a workflow, which my executives are going to see.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that, you know, our employees expect to not lose that connection regardless of where they're coming and going.
Hi, good morning. Marc Hockler, I'm from Shin Wilson Wilkie. It's a unique opportunity to have the three of you here because you represent a part of a sector, certainly that many of us work in, but your facilities also incorporate rooms that not every commercial space or even every financial space has. I'm really interested because it's a common thread with the three of you, and yet it's unique. All three of your companies employ very large or distinct large ballroom, not ballrooms, but large meeting rooms, right? Which are a centerpiece to each auditoriums. They're a centerpiece to each of your organizations. What I would like to know, and I think integrators and consultants sitting here today, what changes have you seen in those large auditorium spaces? Where if any, of collaborative, intent is coming into those spaces? I'm really curious about it because they occupy such a big part of your real estate.
I would say I think that's even changing, right? Because tools like Zoom or a Cisco, when you have WebEx Event Center, or you have the Zoom kind of, I can't remember the term what they call it, but it's like their auditorium kind of view where it's like one out to many. So, I mean, even those I think are going to be less and less because people don't physically need to be there, right? I can just join into this conference or this this state of the union and the organization virtually and not physically be there, so you're probably seeing less and less of those rooms being
Do you
done.
see that in your world, that basically those, like the seat capacity is less and less?
I think it varies per location, but, you know, you design based on how many people are gonna fit a specific location, but you don't see, many events or users really concerned about, filling, an event space to capacity, because they know that they have the ability to go virtual, they can do it virtually.
So we just built a very large auditorium. It's part of a flagship building. And believe me, we tried to make sure it was top-notch and it had all the technology. But there's many, many, many large office locations that we have where they're not gonna put that in. And part of it is you can supplement with streaming to the desktop, but there's still a desire to be able to have these meetings with real people in a real space. One of the things we've pushed over the years, actually a colleague of mine who's now at Cisco, Steve Cox, I think he coined the phrase cafetorium, but it's debatable. This was years ago. This was maybe 10, 15 years ago. Because when we did if there was a Google search at that time, it didn't come up. But in any event,
You didn't try cafeteria atrium.
there you go. But in any event, that kind of a flexible, it goes back to the open kind of workspace and the desire to have less expensive real estate. That kind of space is extremely challenging and very much in demand. And in our organization also, our senior people, they take their message on the road. So while the company may be joining electronically, they're still traveling to all these different locations and they need to have a large presentation space from which to present. I think part of the challenge with that is gonna have to come from the architecture as well as the technology. And you know, we're gonna have to change the way that we build a cafeteria to make sure that it can be used as a auditorium.
Yeah. So I'll play the devil's
Yeah,
advocate.
sure.
I'm building a very large project right now here in the city, and we're building a 400-person auditorium. So we see the need for it still. So that space is still there, but we're not building 2 or 3 of them, we're building 1. And then we're building a lot of conference center and adjustable rooms like this. So these rooms are now the standard. You know, it's what used to be your boardrooms or your 20-person rooms is now people calling it NPR. It's a multi-purpose room. You know, this room used to be a boardroom with 35 seats, big boat-shaped table, and it was very unflexible. Now it's a completely flexible conference room. And that's the standard. That's the way that people are going. But the day of those big conference rooms, integrators, consultants, it's gone. Find a new revenue path, it's gone. You're going to get 5%, maybe 10% of those big rooms. I'm building. Where I need help is I need help with implementation. I need help with deployments. Standards are pretty easy these days. At least in my world, I use a lot of out of the box kit with a few adaptations. But it's deployment and configuration. That's the area that's really big, I think. Because we're deploying so fast that we can't do it ourselves anymore.
I was gonna ask both of you, how often are your events folks or the people who have those big events using those spaces? Like, have you kind of like done, have you done the math to determine, does it pay out? Like, do you get enough usage for the year?
Yeah.
Do you think?
So in this room right here is extremely difficult. Davey got lucky. I was able to book it out, but this room is used 14 times a day. I think we have 3 meetings right behind us. They'll change it up right after this. For the auditorium, we've done our assessments. The amount of times that we go off-site for hotels or other things, it makes sense for having that space. If we're going to convene, we're going to all these other external locations for a 200-person, theater style. It's really also for client experience. So Blackrock, if you know us, we're all about the client experience. So we don't want you to go to a Hyatt and go, here's talk. We want you to come see us. We want you to come and experience Blackrock, walk all our halls and feel our DNA. Understand what we're about, so we want you to walk into that whole experience. So we're all about the experiential, and it makes a different impact. That's what we build our Cortex room, come in here and kind of that experiential lab, come in and understand the life of the trade when you invest in Blackrock.
So is this room used in this format?
This room is used in many formats. So this, I've had jugglers in here. I've had round tables. I've had 400 kids. 400
Magicians.
400 kids writing on these walls. So and this is also the same room that we signed the BGI merger in. So I've done a lot of things in this multi-purpose flexible space. We have mobile conference tables that come in here. It's completely flexible in every manner to support any type of event.
You're using 4 boxes?
No, take a look. There's not a single floor box on the floor.
Okay, so you're just doing.
There's actually, sorry, I take that. There's 3 floor boxes. One by the podium and one in the rear to power the tables. Everything else is wireless. Or when we do training room style, we use all my power data off the walls. Or when we do command center, so like when we had some of the earthquakes in Taiwan, this is a network command center to understand when we lost the data center. So we sort of bring desks in here, becomes a command center. You have lots of signs on the wall, or regular training. No gaffers tape. No gaffers tape. I use nice tables right against the walls, or we use nice Velcro floor cover when we really have to.
Those are great, by the way.
Yeah. But for the most part, like they say, the whole design of this is I couldn't core in this particular location, and there's no raised floor, so we had to get really creative. So we used lots of wireless mics. We used lots of I think there's 5 cameras in the room. It's all flexible. Just gets it a very flexible space.
I got a question for you guys. When you, and no disrespect for the consultants in the room, you're probably gonna jump at me, but at what point has basically metrics taken over your designs? Because what's happening, and it's a hotly contested conversation, at least that I've seen online. At what point does metrics now start specifying your space? Now, consultants will still do your acoustics, lighting, and that sort of science that AV brings to a space. But where does metrics fit in? Because more and more, you're starting to hear how the numbers have to be right in order for us to build X. Right? Even building a 400-person conference room, something.
You have to have data to prove it.
Yeah, something in there is telling you 400 is the limit because maybe 10 years ago it would have been 1,000. So I'll let you guys answer that question.
I was gonna say metrics play in any of the designers or any of the products that I'm responsible for they play 100% of the reason why we go with a specific product, right? We're always asking for feedback. What was your experience using this? What did you think about this? And using that information to go back to determine, okay, where can we either add features or remove features or look for something, solution that has, additional capability. So, I think metrics are critical as for us as end users to be successful, right? Because obviously I can't speak for everybody here, but your leadership is not going to make a decision without the data, right? So they're not going to say, okay, here's the funding. You need to have the data to prove to them why you need that funding. So,
But for me, the only way I get funding is by showing data. We're very Blackrock's a financial institution. We're also a very large spinner company. So data is everything to us. So being able to show that this room is used 98% of the time between the hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., it shows that we need more of it. The fact that we're taking the metrics to the next point. What is this room used for? It's just audio conferencing. It's a video. So those are the next metrics that are becoming very important to understand how space is used. That's what companies like Biopter and a few of the other ones out there are really starting to hone in on. All right, the room has all this technology. How is it used? When is it used? How often is it used? How many people are using it? That's the kind of feedback that's still becoming very, very important to all of us, I think. And people are getting close to it, but I think it's still developing space. I know there are a lot of thoughts on
No,
this.
absolutely. I mean, so traditionally, a lot of those decisions were made by corporate realty.
Yeah.
Right? I think corporate realty is more willing now to partner with technologists because they understand the value and maybe the sellability of the metrics argument. But in an open work space like we're building a lot of now, there's a formula that we're using. It's so many people on the floor. There's so many huddle rooms and so many medium conference rooms and so many large conference rooms. I think that those ratios are working pretty much, but I don't know that we're testing them the way we need to be testing them for future builds.
And how do you get to those ratios? I think it's the key. Was it 10 people per? Sounds about right. Was it a guess? Was it a consumption, or did you get data? Are you using room sensor? Right. Are you using actual data to get? That's how we got there.
So today, I think it's a little bit of both. but it's a little bit more guesswork than anybody would like, because I think the challenge then is also, when you're talking about metrics, how can we get the information, and how do we interpret that information properly to make sure that we're doing the right thing? And in my case, you know, I'm always looking for ways to leverage some of the technology that I have to gain further metrics. So not having to install expensive devices in rooms to gather that information. Some things that have been interesting to me is a lot of video conferencing systems today have the capability to do facial recognition, to count the number of people in rooms. You know, you can, what you do with that is I think one of the big questions. How do you pull that information in a meaningful way, and how do you interpret that in a way that comes up with a good result? And just a quick example of that, you know, when you made some mention, David, about like utilization, right? And some people say, well, we want to see 100% utilization. Well, to me, 100% utilization means probably people don't get to a conference room when they need it, right? So, you know, it's very tricky. I think you kind of alluded to this, like, well, what do those numbers really mean, and what is it that we really want? But we definitely need, I think there are tools out there, but we are struggling to deploy them effectively today.
I also think that it's key to make sure that you have your data, you have your analytics, but you also keep your pulse on your end users. So without the two validating each other, then you know, I can build an entire facility off this great data. And the data could have been skewed, sensor could have been off, so you have to make sure that you talk with your end users. Does what you're building fit their workflow? Does what they really need? Are you solving their core problems, or are you just giving them a fancy toy in their conference room? So you know, this was challenged me about 5 years ago. It's like, you know, don't just deploy rooms, don't just give our users technology. Make sure you're giving them an ecosystem they can work in, and that's what they really need. And that's why I think we're here at Blackrock have become a 99% successful video engaged environment. Everyone's on video, and you're the outlier when you're not, because we've sat integrating our data, our end users, and our technology all in one ecosystem.
I mean, sitting down with your colleagues and peers, you know, sending out surveys, understanding like what you were in this NPR space, what was successful, what went well, what didn't go well. I mean, those are questions you should be asking, and just be ready for the feedback, and try not to be on the defensive.
And
If you hear
I would say
something,
be accepting of the feedback. Feedback, feedback in my 13 years is the most important thing to take. Good or bad, the feedback is just it's free information back of like where you failed, where you did good, and how you can do better next time.
right, and just know, like, you know, if you're sending out a survey, you're not going to expect 100% return on the survey. You're probably getting about 20 or 30%, but that's good, right? That's data you can use to come up with, you know, better solutions or capabilities for your users.
When I was on site for 13 years, I increased the room by about 150% utilization, simply because the end users weren't telling me why they weren't using these 3 particular rooms. All just like every had the same equipment as every other room. These one set of rooms at the end point were not being used. Why? 2 weeks sitting outside, I noticed that what happened. The other rooms are not that. They had a credenza to put their food, so they weren't paying. There was no metric system in place at the time that wasn't going to capture that. So sometimes it takes a little investigative work to do that.
One thing I just want to add about the metrics thing, one of the challenges that I think we can face out there is there are still different networks for different facilities. So communications may be on a corporate network, room lighting sensors may be on a building network, and for security purposes, it's not that easy to bring these things together. And so I think people are starting to recognize those problems and address them, but it's aggravating sometimes when you're trying to design space and you're looking for an occupancy sensor, and there's already, you know, occupancy sensors in all the rooms because they work with the lights, but I can't get that information. Or the system that they use won't report it at the level that I need it, right?
So would you say that your spaces are becoming smart spaces or smarter spaces? Or better yet, are you operating in a smart building?
Well, I think that's the goal. I mean, I think it's a recognized goal that we need to have a smart building. And there's a lot of drivers, right? There's the metrics that we're all talking about. There's energy conserving, requirements. So I think that's a good thing because it's forcing, as I said, the corporate realty people to work with the IT people, to work with the telecom people. Hopefully that will bring stuff together.
Yeah, it forces, key decision makers to sit at a table and, and say, hey, look, here's the data, here's what people are saying, and we have to do something, right? These are the reasons why millennials don't want to come to work here. These are the reasons why this particular group, may not be interested in working on this floor. So, that data is just critical, and that's going to make kind of measure success.
Hi, quick question, Nene from Planar. You're aggregating all this data. Is there one person that's responsible in your firm to assemble all the data and put all those players at the table, or are you outsourcing that to, maybe consultants or somebody else?
I think it varies per firm, per organization or company, right? If you're a product owner within, for an end user, you have the data that you could bring to the table to when you're having your conversations with security or real estate or whomever. The key is making sure you have that data and that you know who the decision makers are in the various other groups that you're working with, right? So whether that's a monthly meeting with real estate or a quarterly meeting to just go over the data and metrics, that's something, you as an end user owner need to be facilitating.
And to your question, Lainey, I think we're open to anybody to pull all that data together, right? I mean, I think that right now the challenge is maybe that it's not clear who can aggregate all that data for us.
I would say, we have the data, we don't have the, we're building out our AI and our process automation labs right now to take on that type of workflow. I sit in a really great spot because I sit with, corporate real estate and, I sit in technology and operations here at Blackrock. So corporate real estate is 4 desks down from me. We're in one org owned by one person. So it's a lot easier to coordinate inside of ourselves. But how do I then take that and coordinate with, the other teams and things like that? So that data is very important. But I don't know anybody that's really owning it right now. I know a couple of consultants want to sell services, they get me there. But
If you look at the IT AV report from last year, spring 1999, Case Murphy did an article on data lakes in organizations.
But I think it's a huge area that's still underdeveloped. I think it's the podium mic. I think it's an underdeveloped space in our industry that's still growing, and it's one of those hot spots that's, I think, a new revenue channel for a lot of consultants and possibly even the integrators to go down that road and find that for us.
And think about how, one of the things that I gave in the opening presentation, how that's going to change significantly in our space. Because yes, you can put in sensors for the lights, and yes, you can put in sensors, but you already have the cameras in the room. And none of the camera platform providers are going to give you the room data unless they're in a call.
Yep.
So if you're making Cisco calls, you get the data from Cisco. If you're making Zoom calls, you get the data from Zoom. But if you're not making calls, only the camera manufacturer can get you the data. So the industry is kind of pivoting right there, right now.
And it's interesting too, right? If you look at if you have an iOS device, and I can't speak for Android, on Sundays around 10 a.m. you get that weekly update, like which apps you used and which apps you didn't. I mean, that's a lot of data right there, and it changes your behavior on how you use your mobile device. So, I mean, it is critical, right? Those metrics. So, however you can obtain it, do it. Sure.
Thank you, Jerry Berger with LeBron. Question for you three and perhaps the room as well. If you had one wish relative to either a technology that isn't there yet, or a system that hasn't been designed, or a product that you wish existed, what would that one thing be?
To me, this is an easy one. What I'm looking for is the technology's there. We're here. I think everyone talks about video. Like we're there. What I'm looking for, what I want, and there's things out there, but they're still too complex to use, is a central AV management tool. Things like Utology. Things like right now it's all piecemeal and it's not done well. for where we are with AI and technology, dashboards and things like that, the AV industry is very far behind. And it's really because there's a lot of silos between, like, I want my Cisco system to be able to talk to my Polycom sound structure and to be able to talk to, and all see heartbeats, how they're used, all in one ecosystem. And we're getting close, but it's very expensive, and the product owners want to charge a lot for licensing to get there. So, all right, maybe the product's there, but it's going to cost me $20,000 a year to run it in this room. Not worth it to me. Or the platforms won't talk to each other. So to me, that's the biggest thing, is being able to get is tools to grab those metrics, so I can keep building and expanding the space.
I think that's kind of a trick question, because
That's what I want.
every vertical has, different people, they have different needs.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'll ever really be able to get like a consistent answer on that. What I do think is, I definitely think software is probably the wave of the future, and making sure you have APIs available so folks can kind of do something with the API. I mean, if anything, that's give the API to any and everybody, because various verticals, healthcare, legal, financial services, everybody has developers now, and they could inter-source and create some code or open source that will work to their advantage. So, bit of a trick question as far as how you want to approach that.
I'll give you a really direct answer. One thing I need is a wireless presentation tool that's secure, that's monitorable and manageable, and that will allow me to work on multiple platforms and multiple networks. Because I have, think about it, when we build out conference spaces, there's people who come in and they want to be on the corporate network. That's a secure network. Somebody else comes in, we want them on the guest network. The wireless device has to be able to merge
That
those.
exists now. That exists now. We have manufacturers in the room that can do that for you. What you have to play with
Okay.
is your InfoSec and your network teams to make sure that they can fit into that platform. But the technology
Well,
is physically there.
let me ask you though, is there one device that will work on 3 different networks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you guys come up and talk to me after the
For me, I know that the device exists. I've been trying to get in for the last 5 years. I think you guys know I'm trying to get in the last 5 years. But I have a hard lock for security reasons and for InfoSec. And
Well,
network
absolutely,
efficiency.
absolutely.
I think in financial industry, that product's much more difficult, but in the education, pharma, and other verticals, very easy, and it's solved already.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, to that point, right, there's a variety of these devices that could probably work for your particular use case, but I think in financials, it's much more difficult when we're financially, we're regulated.
Yes.
So, we have to be very careful about any type of data that's being transmitted wirelessly, whether that's video or audio. So I think that's the key thing you probably need to consider. But I don't think that product doesn't exist today. It does exist, and the use case may be
Like I
different
said,
for various-
I'm all ears.
It's been a work in your environment.
Right,
working
yeah.
in
Well,
financials.
yeah, I mean, that's an
You
important
need to
part, it's
segment
gotta
it,
work
it
for
may need
my
to be
device.
its own VLAN, like there's various ways to do
And
it.
the other thing is, I also think when we look at financials,
I still want that product.
same thing. I want my software, and I need it in like the next year. So
And then the other thing to think about, more importantly than obviously the legal and security part of it, is it easy for end users to use?
yeah,
Does it fit
and
their
that's
needs? Is that what they're really asking for?
yeah, the idea is like.
It's what they're asking for, is it what they really want, is it?
Yeah, but like, how seamless does that need to be for your guest versus your, this is an ongoing question in the industry. How seamless does your employee experience need to be compared to your guest experience? Do they have to be the same experience? Can they be slightly different? Because I think in financials this becomes a big problem all the time, that the user experience between a on-prem user and an off-prem user is always going to be different. But the question is, how close do those user experiences have to be alike? And can there be caveats that, oh, if you're an off-prem user, you have to, register this, this, and this, and then it'll work for you. Like, there's going to be caveats because there's security concerns, but like, how far off does that have to be to get you there?
What we are working as our standard is to say, if you are using an Android device or you're using an Apple device, it should be using the same interface and protocol that you're used to using on those devices, right? We don't want to have some people download special software, right? Or have to learn a whole new process.
Yeah, I think that really is, first we're consumers, right? So at home, you see how easy it is to kind of transmit like a YouTube video to your display. So if they could do that, what they could do at home, in the office, and half the battle is one right there, right? So it's really just like, okay, what app are you using? Does the app have that ability to kind of screen share or on your device, whether you're Android or Apple?
We have time for one last quick question, if you keep it quick.
Michael Goldman, CBA. I have a follow-up to you guys. I think it'll be a yes, no answer. You can probably after a little deeper. When you talk about monitoring and management, are you looking for something that a manufacturer delivers to you, or are you looking at using APIs to build your own, get exactly what you need?
I'm open to either. Out of the box is always easier for you to deploy, but I'm open to either. Like I say, the technology is there to do it now. The APIs are there. The problem is no one's, I'm a person in my role doesn't have the time or the ability to do it because we're too busy doing other things. Developers get it. They're more of an IT developer than an AV developer. So the product doesn't exist fully, I think, in the market today. That's platform diagnostic. Doesn't care what kind of product you are. I'm doing it today via a tool that's meant for managing servers because it's the best thing I have to my licensing ability, and it's free. It's there, but I want more. So the answer is I'm open to either one. I think that Utology, barcode, there are people out there getting close, but I think it's still very expensive.
Yeah, I think if you were to look the other direction, and look at what someone like VMware is doing out west,
Yep.
you would see that they're not using solutions like that, but they're going the other route to the APIs, doing development themselves, and use developers. So
Exactly.
I find it's much more cost effective.
It definitely can be.
From my perspective, to just kind of build on what Loma was saying, like that API thing is very, very huge. I also think that, as end users, you need to look at your talent and probably change or look at how your teams are kind of structured and determine whether or not you need an in-house developer, right, to help you hold the data and build the application that you need. So that's just something that
The one downside to that, and we have a crazy developer system somewhere in Edinburgh, builds great tools, but when they're gone, how are these now homegrown tools supported? What's the biggest?
Inner source books.
Yeah, which is the biggest problem is build, like you go homegrown, and then you get into that little rat hole of like, all right, now we built this homegrown solution. Dave, you know this from your days at Lumen and everywhere else. You don't want to get into those pitfalls.
I agree, right? I think that's where open source wasn't a really big thing back then, but I think if you're open source and you build a software tool, make sure that it can be inner source. So what that means is I can have developer A come in and do something, developer B could come in and do something, developer C could come in, but they're still using that main source code because it's open. And I think that's the key in that from that perspective.
Well, let me take this opportunity to apologize to everybody who put in the other panel, guys that didn't get along very well. Can we have a round of applause for Chris? None of us are leaving. We're all going to be here. We're going to take a 10-minute break, 15-minute break maximum. We want to come back and do the other presentation at around 10:30. And we'll have Marc and the team from Blackrock to do that. But restrooms, food, network, thanks very much.
The one, it was, you came and said, oh, I want to make sure it's seated correctly. Next thing you know,